Okay, I think we'll get going. So good morning, everybody. My name's Andrew Van Doorn. I'm the Chief Executive of HACT, and I'm going to be chairing the session today. I'm also a non-exec director in the NHS at London North West University Healthcare NHS Trust up in North West London. And today, this is the fourth or the final of a series of webinars that we've been doing with the Health Anchor Learning Network, looking at what can the NHS learn from housing and housing associations on a range of different topics. And so far, we've covered workforce, we've covered social value, we've covered community development, and today we're looking at the question of economic development. And we wanted to put on these webinars with the network, and huge thanks to the team at the network and the innovation unit for kind of partnering with us on this, because we wanted to find a way in which we could start to share the experiences that other anchor institutions have in how they're doing a whole range of different works, and housing associations as asset-based organisations across the UK are anchor institutions as well. And we wanted to not only kind of demonstrate and share the learning, but also hopefully to kind of create a new connection as well between the NHS and housing associations. And economic development is one of those issues that's really at the core of the heart of the work that many housing associations do across the country. In fact, in building homes, in kind of construction, in kind of working in neighbourhoods, actually they're a significant contributor to local economic development in the areas in which they work. But it's not just in the kind of the building of homes that housing associations make their contribution to economic development. It's also in the delivery of those homes, and it's also in the other work and the wider work that they do. And I'm delighted that today we're joined by Babu Bhattacherjee. He is the Director of Communities and Neighbourhoods at Poplar HARCA. And Poplar HARCA as an organisation has been working at the forefront of economic development and social housing and regeneration and a whole range of things for decades in Tower Hamlets. And Babu's going to share some of his thoughts about how that's been happening for them, the kind of work that they do. He's going to share some of his thoughts about how they connect already with the NHS. And then we're going to have a conversation about kind of how far can we take this agenda? What role can NHS organisations really play in that economic development, and where is the creativity in that space? And with the integrated care systems will be, that's the fourth priority is about their contribution to social and economic regeneration and development. And we're really looking forward to the conversation. But before I hand over to Babu, this is how we'll manage the conversation. So please do use the chat to kind of share any thoughts as we go, use the chat to share any ideas you have or any links or that you might have to things online that you can share with fellow kind of participants. Please do use the question and answer if you want to, but we found actually in these webinars, it's probably better if we use the chat function. It's just a little bit more dynamic. But I'll be keeping my eye on both the question and answers and also on the chat, depending on where you want to put your questions. We'll first of all hear from Babu about some of the work that he's been doing, and particularly around some of the work around workforce. And then we'll open out that conversation, and then we'll also take your input and your questions as we go. So I'm just going to hand over to Babu. Babu, welcome.
Thanks, Drew, and morning, everyone. Great to be here, and let me share some of the things that we've been doing. So, first of all, I thought I would just start. I've got a little presentation as well, but first of all, I thought I'd just start by talking about Poplar HARCA and what we are and what we're about. So, as Drew said, we're a housing association. Drew talked about some of the things that housing associations do and the things that we do. But the specific characteristics I wanted to point out are the fact that we're local. So we're very geographically concentrated. We work in Tower Hamlets, and we work in a quarter of Tower Hamlets, in a couple of square miles of Tower Hamlets. And that really does make it a very kind of personal, involved, committed relationship with our local residents, with the stakeholders in the area, and we feel like we're an anchor organisation. We feel like we're a champion for this community, and we feel like we've got to make it work. We've got to invest in what we do. We've got a big priority around tackling poverty, so that happens to be a massive part of our work, and it guides a lot of what we do. So. Yes, we have a regeneration focus. A lot of the stock in Tower Hamlets is some of the worst examples of building in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And so a lot of that really does need to go. It's not fit for purpose anymore. It's not been a great experience for residents. And despite the fact that we've invested hugely in our stock, there is still a lot of it that actually kind of is end of life and needs to be replaced. One of the other things I was going to say is that we're really interested in the infrastructure of the area, and something about strategy and where strategy kind of, I guess, kind of filters through into local plans is developing that network of community infrastructure, of voluntary sector infrastructure, statutory sector infrastructure. It's really supporting and enabling that. And so that involvement in the local community and local organisations is really important to our work, and it just sort of sets an overall framework. So everything we do, it's really based on understanding the area, understanding the local community, investing in the institutions, the organisations that are working in that community, and being involved in it as well. So you'll find a lot of our staff are involved on NHS committees and boards, on school committees and boards, with local GPs, with local voluntary organisations. So it really is that kind of connection at a local level, and a very deep connection at that local level. One of the things I also think we do is that we support community leadership, and I guess community leadership is quite a big thing for us, and it's something that we've invested in for 20 years. And there are various ways in which we do this, and I think it's the building blocks for broader strategy, broader economic thinking. And so what we do is we build skills through our governance setup. So we have residents on our board, or have local organisations kind of strongly involved in our board and our governance structure. And we've also got our staff are very local. They live in the local area, they work in the local area, and we encourage their active involvement. So we've got this great kind of skills development service. It's almost supplemental to what we do, and I think it's an interesting kind of point that we might pick up later. Just this idea of how we upskill our local community to help them take advantages of what else is going on in their area, and so that active community, both from the organisation's point of view, and us reaching out, but also bringing people in and getting them to understand and benefit from the work that we do. We also kind of have a really active role in helping residents, staff and board members reach their goals. So we're doing this thing all the time. What do you want to achieve? How do you want to get there? How do we help you to get there? And that, again, that's a very local level. And it's also about recognising and promoting those local skills. And I'll talk in a bit about our partnership with Barts Healthcare, but it is kind of saying, oh, look, there's a natural advantage. Our residents have this natural advantage, whether they understand kind of the local community, whether they speak community languages, where they live in stable accommodation. So, you know, transport is very easy. So we'll be recognizing and promoting that and making sure that works. And I think the biggest thing that we do is provide this safety net of services. So yes, good quality, low cost housing, but also this infrastructure of community services. If things happen, life is unpredictable in our community. If you work in an area of poverty, if you work in an area where people are dealing with the impact of poverty, you find that people, their circumstances change very quickly. So at one stage, everything can be going well, and it only takes a little while and things start to fall apart. And it's us being that safety net, whether that's around community support, kind of providing kind of essentials, whether it's about low cost food, whether it's about the family support, kind of doing all those things. It's really kind of the building blocks, getting them a job, getting their skills upgraded. It's like that, dealing with that unpredictability. So you have that stability, and that stability means you're really, really going to do well. I suppose one other thing before I go onto the slides, and Drew might need to help me out in a second, actually, just in case I get this wrong, but hopefully, you know, it'll work out well. That there's a question about competitiveness versus collaboration, and again, I'm talking about the building blocks here. So sort of what do we do to create the circumstances where it's a collaboration rather than us fighting for a piece of the pie and kind of, you know, us trying to get it to the top, and others by definition not getting to the top and maybe losing out. And I think that we need to model collaboration much more in what we do and how we do it. And so our strategies need to be collaborative. And I think if you look at a lot of the processes around us, you know, housing, despite what we're trying to do, is a kind of a competitive process. You know, you get to the top of the list and then you get a home, and if you're at the bottom of the list, you know, you have to wait a long time, and sometimes, you know, people are on there for years. And similarly in politics, you know, it's first past the post, so you get this thing again of, you know, one winner and the others kind of have to wait another 4 years or whatever it is. And I think that this idea of collaboration is not a wishy-washy thing. As I get into the detail, we've had to work very, very hard to bring our partners together. And again, you know, an organization that's around for a while can do that. We can be collaborative. We can take the time to build the relationships, and take the time to build relationships that deliver real benefits, because the real sense of, oh, we collaborate, as in you're on a list of people that I talk to, I don't really listen to you, I don't really kind of test your ability to deliver what you say you're going to do. So I think collaboration has to be kind of quite hard-nosed in a way, even though I'm saying it's an important approach, and it kind of at its heart, it needs to demonstrate its effectiveness. What's the point of collaboration unless it actually delivers what we want to deliver? And so the kind of talking shop collaboration is not what I'm talking about. It's real life delivery, real life fixing problems, and working with each other, and recognizing that we have to compromise, that we have to invest, that we have to support around that. Right, on that note, I'm going to try and share my screen. So let's see how I get on with this. So hopefully you can now see the first slide. So if I take you through this, let's see if I can get this to move. Okay. Oh, here we go. So long term, we're talking about something that's taken us 15 years. This key point about shared objectives, collaboration, joining of resources. Again, this idea of commitment from the top. We need this buy-in from the very top. We believe in an area-based approach. I've explained why. I've said that the way we work really kind of benefits from understanding the area, understanding the issues, understanding the people, and making sure that we embed that into everything we do. And then yeah, this question of who we work with. We are working with people who are not currently employable often, because their skills will need development, their confidence will need building, they'll need to establish their experience, they'll need to develop functional skills that might be around English or maths. So we really think that's the area where we can add most benefit. And it's not that we couldn't do more to be a colour talent pool. I mean, I mentioned the talent pool in a slightly different context in a second, but it's not that we couldn't do that. We couldn't just be a broker, but that's not where we feel the value is. It's that long-term change. It's bringing people in. It's recognising the issues of how racism and injustice and unfairness have limited the opportunities that people have. And also, if we don't recognize that injustice and we don't work to change that, then we're not creating the long-term change that's going to benefit the area and really make things work. And I suppose one thing I'd say around that is that poverty, especially in our area, in Poplar in East London, it's been around for hundreds of years, and so we have to treat it with respect. You know, we hate the impact of poverty and what it does to families and communities, but in a way, if we're not in it for the long term, we're not going to shift a problem that's taken so long to emerge and take hold and be stubbornly unshifting despite the efforts of people over many years. So I'll tell you a bit more about the partnership with Barts Health, and you'll see from this, you'll see from this that there are many other people who are involved in this. The local authority have been key. We've needed to negotiate around how jobs get advertised, and the DWP has been really important too. So it's building that broader coalition, it's understanding the impact of that. And so DWP have been great. We've had to work with them really closely, and it's them identifying people as well as us identifying people who will really kind of benefit from this. And in essence, the program kind of works in this particular way. We're getting those referrals, we're getting those from our community provision. We've got a network of community centres. We've got outreach going on. We're talking to our residents all the time through our housing teams. We're getting those people in. We're giving them information about what they're going to get, recruiting them onto the program. It's a relatively short training program, and we're making sure that it's sharp, It does what the NHS wants. It does what Barts wants. It does what the DWP wants. It does what the local authority wants. So we're creating that real virtuous circle. Everyone knows what we're doing. Everyone knows why we're doing it. Those individuals then get admitted onto the talent pool if they achieve their qualifications and they do well in the process. And then within the NHS, it means that they're eligible for the internal vacancies. And it's been really good because what they're getting is all the knowledge that the NHS are bringing. So they're getting a real up-to-date feel for what the priorities of the NHS are, what people want. And so when it comes to interview, they're really good. And so often they're competing with staff who've been around for a while within the NHS and are looking for promotion or looking for a change. But often those individuals, they know everything about the practicalities of the NHS. They don't necessarily understand the latest thinking and latest strategies. And sometimes our individuals really are spot on in terms of the kind of personalities and profile and skills and sort of attributes that the NHS are looking for. So they tend to do very well, and we tend to find that the recruitment via the talent pool into permanent vacancies is around 80% actually. So very good. And then the option of a work placement for those who need it to really embed their practical skills. I'll just go into some of the programs. So we're doing a broader program, kind of the general piece. We've got some specific programs for young people. We did a great program for young care leavers. Again, it just shows the power of if you've got trust and you can take people on a journey and you can keep them on the rails, because often for young people, there's all sorts of distractions. There's all sorts of things. I mean, the pressures on young people are enormous. And so our ability to focus our support, to keep people going, to develop the soft skills, fantastic for that cohort, and a really successful program. We're working a lot with our disabled residents. Again, it's a specific program really tailored to their needs. And again, we're seeing some great outcomes with Barts and getting people into permanent work. And again, women in health, we're working a lot with older women, we're working with single parents, we're working with a whole range of people. And again, the outcomes are phenomenal. And when you see this virtuous circle, when all the agencies, I talked about DWP, I talked about Barts, I talked about the local authority, when you see this, people are promoting this in their own organizations. They're saying, look what we've done, well, look what we've done as a local authority. I heard this quoted back to me the other day from the local authority saying like, oh, we've done this fantastic piece of work around women in health. I said, oh yeah, we could take a bit of credit for that too. And it's really building that shared enthusiasm and kind of love for what we're doing. So yeah, really important. We talked previously about local labour, so that's really important to us. That's a really kind of key thing that we're doing. We really like this idea of a local labour force linking to local businesses, influencing them. So you're getting this virtuous circle again. It's linking back to local communities. It's making it work for local communities. It's making that workforce sustainable. And as it's people like me, it's that bit. When you see a young person that maybe was a care leaver getting into a job, when you see a woman whose first language isn't English and they're getting a job, and they've done the hard work, but you can see where they are, that's such a confidence booster, and you sort of get that kind of momentum going. It's kind of gathering momentum. It's building, and it's a really fantastic thing. And I talked before about this thing about natural assets. We can talk about stigma of people in social housing. Actually, we thought it was a really positive thing, and so did the NHS, so did our partners, that actually people living in social housing are local, they can afford to travel because it's not too far, they're not paying high accommodations costs, and they've got homes for life. So yeah, fine, you might start at the bottom, you might start at the entry level, but you've got your opportunities for progression. You can see that, and you can sustain that level for a little while you wait for those opportunities to arise and your skills develop and your confidence develops. So it's a really good process, and you can see the economic impact that it has. And so at that very granular local level, it's kind of it's building on all the other things that are happening. As I say, it's dealing with some of those EDI points and really kind of dealing with access to opportunities for disadvantaged groups. And then, we've talked about this before, but these are some of the people we work with. So we've got this great cohort of people. And again, you know, these are communities we all want to work with. And I think this buzz that we're really making waves in this is fantastic and infectious. So I was going to finish off with a little quote from one of our residents, and actually I should make this point that it's not just our residents that benefit from this. We think about 50% of the people going through this are Poplar HARCA residents in an area where we've got 10,000 units. You know, that would make sense, but actually the other 50% are coming from anywhere and everywhere, and so it really is a very local but very kind of open process, and it really does make such a difference. And it's that difference from just sort of matching people to really making that bigger champion role and the collaboration. And people see organizations working together and see it being focused around them for a change. So for so long, it's been impersonal, and they've been at the receiving end of what the agencies do. So it's really nice to see that turned around and saying, like, actually, it's for you. We're going to put this together so it works for you. And the confidence that brings and the momentum that drives is fantastic. So I think that's me done. So I will stop sharing my slides and hand you back to Drew.
Thank you so much, Babu. That was really brilliant. Okay, so as I said before, please put any thoughts or any questions you want to put to Babu into the chat, and what Babu and I, we can have a bit of a conversation now. And I've worked quite a long time with Poplar HARCA and with Babu, so and over many years seen the passion from the organization and passion from the people, and actually the role it plays. And I think, Babu, you used a phrase which really struck me about, well, two things that really struck me. One was about kind of respecting poverty. I thought that was a really important concept, actually, because in some, as you say, working where you are in East London, centuries of poverty, and actually in some respects that's an experience across the country. You know, poverty isn't something that just happens to an area overnight. It's something which is ingrained and is structural and has been there for a long time. And in the kind of the anchor institution concept, in particularly in how it's kind of evolving in the NHS, is that it's closely linked to health inequalities, and it's seen as a way in which the NHS can start to work differently at a place with its partners to really start to address some of those quite ingrained health inequalities. And, you know, health inequalities and poverty, we can use a range of different languages, but actually they're the same things. They're the experience that people have as a result of poverty. And the other concept that I thought was really interesting is you talked about collaboration, and I think that, you know, the kind of the direction of travel for integrated care systems, integrated care partnerships for the NHS is actually moving away from a competitive environment that has kind of ingrained a set of behaviours in the NHS over many years, which we now recognise and believe actually they're not fit for purpose. If we're going to have a more integrated agenda going forward, and we're going to really tackle those issues around health inequalities, we need to be much more collaborative. So can I just ask, in your experience, what are the kind of behaviours that you look for when being more collaborative? What would your advice be to people on this webinar about the things they really have to develop to be a collaborative partner rather than a competitor?
Yeah. Something that we talk a lot about at Poplar HARCA is kindness. And kind of so you can read about this. The Carnegie Trust have done a lot of work on kindness, and kindness, again, not as an abstract concept, but something that really focuses what you do and what you're about. And I think it's that ability to understand how you work and how you can build relationships and how you can put people at ease and start to build from a solid base. So I think that's one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is diversity of thought. So I think quite often we look at people and we have some quite fixed views. So I think one of the things about collaboration that we do is we try and understand different worlds as well as we can. And so in our case, we spend a lot of time with local GPs. In a health context, we spend a lot of time with local GPs, so much so that actually we're starting to provide integrated services with GPs. So we've got a physical hub where we've got GPs based. This is going to go live in about 4 or 5 months, where we've got GPs based with us, and we're going to be providing community services in the same space. And the ground floor is going to be about wellness and supporting the community, and the upstairs is going to be more of a traditional kind of health offer. And so for us, it's really understanding what's going on with GPs, what's going on with COVID, and the pressures that's placing on local services. How are GPs working with local communities? So that collaboration is really about that deeper understanding that we all have, B, kind of that diversity of thinking and allowing ourselves to think about different things. And I suppose the third thing is to be kind, to have that sense of kindness about how we do and how we interact. And I think that those three things really do work well in collaboration. I mean, you know, there are the things about working from the top, so that you have people that can draw their organizations in, understanding the power of communication. So we spend a lot of time, actually a lot of time, taking people round, you know, like showing people physically what's happening in the area, walking around the trust and understanding the different dynamics, spending a lot of time with HR departments so we understand what the workforce is doing and how the organizations operate. So it really is that deep, almost like if you were forming a human relationship, you know, if you wanted to kind of find a life partner, that's what you do. You'd find out all about them. You'd find out their interests. You'd find out their likes and dislikes. And hopefully that would make you a bit more of a prospect yourself.
Excellent. So we've got a number of questions coming in. And one of the questions is about how, you know, it's recognizing that people, you know, across the country are doing this kind of work. There are many third sector organizations who are providing employment support, many using kind of, as one of the participants says, expiring ESF funds. Could you talk a bit about the kind of about the multi-agency approach that you've taken? Because it is a truly multi-agency approach, isn't it, that you do around your employment support?
Yeah, I think what we start from, just the funding point, actually, which I didn't mention this, but we provide these services through funding sources that we found ourselves. So it doesn't cost the NHS anything for us to do this work. Obviously, we need the vacancies on the other side, but actually this is work that we fundraise for ourselves. And actually, yeah, we are getting the legacy ESF funding that's coming through the local authorities, and hopefully that will continue to be met by our UK government. This multi-agency collaboration is about, I talked about this investment in infrastructure. There's something about anchor organisations working in areas of poverty where actually the infrastructure is kind of fairly underdeveloped. And what you get is this funding question where if there's money there, you'll get lots of people diving in saying, oh, we can do something and we can do it really well. But what you find is when the money goes, those organizations go as well. So there's something about the short-term nature of some funding sources and some ways of stimulating activity. And we're really about building relationships over the long term. So the first thing we'll do is not form a big partnership instantly. It will take us a couple of years to build up those links, build up those relationships. And we're also investing in our local community. I mean, one of the things, so I I'm in the fortunate position of having a housing association core funding our work with the community. And so we get around 2.5 million, 2.4 million from Poplar HARCA towards our work. It's incredibly valuable. But what we do is we give a third of that, about 800,000, straight out in core funding to local community organisations. You know, and I get my staff sort of saying like, why are you doing that, Babu? You know, like you could be funding my post, you know, you could be funding additional posts within the organisation. But it's really important that we spread that core funding, that idea of long-term stable funding within our network so that they're able to respond to these opportunities. So there's no magic. All these partners are there, really willing to work, do all their things for you. You have to nurture those relationships. You have to fund those relationships. You have to deal with the dips. And we talk about the dips in individuals' lives. I mean, often organizations go through this up and down cycle where funding is all over the place. They're attracting loads of money. It's fantastic. Suddenly that drops and, you know, you're trying to sustain the basics of an organization. So us being able to provide that core funding and build those long-term partnerships is about our approach and how we work. And so when we say like, let's collaborate together to really deal with employment, to really do something different, there's the capacity there. And so we've helped to build that capacity, and then we can take advantage of that capacity for the benefit of the local area. So it really is some deeper kind of around the edges stuff that really makes this stuff work very well.
Indeed, I think, and actually, as you know, that stability, that kind of long-term partnership, we're together for a long time. And the sharing of those resources, the sharing of that expertise is really important. And actually, I think often people don't often realize just how much value smaller or community-based organizations get out of very small amounts of money in comparison to us as larger organizations. It's phenomenal value. So Babu, there was a few other questions here about a bit more about the kind of the work the program supporting employment into the NHS, and about how do you kind of ensure that people, what are the type of entry-level jobs, and do people and are you working with kind of long-term careers in that? And then there was also another question about how have your NHS partners managed to kind of ring fence vacancies as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about, I'll answer that last one first. So it's an interesting thing about this talent pool. So the talent pool is something that Barts have created, which is essentially there is some work experience in there, so people can shadow permanent post holders and understand what's going on within the NHS. But essentially, what we're allowed to do is use our training program to bring them into the NHS family. So they're not employees, but they get the right to bid for internal jobs, which is fantastic. So we know there are lots and lots of internal vacancies. And so these individuals get first dibs before it goes out to the wider environment. And that is the magic here. So they're getting input from Bart's HR department. So their head of human resources is coming on our programs, is doing a session, is effectively interviewing those individuals, and then saying you can come onto the talent pool. When they're in the talent pool, they're getting access to all the vacancies. We're helping them to understand where they want to go in. So they're going into entry-level jobs, they're going into support roles, they're going into roles that will allow progression, but they're going in on the bottom run. But they're getting the opportunity to go in there in a relatively safe environment. Now, I don't know how many more applications they would get if they went outside, but effectively they're getting something that feels like a unique opportunity, a real kind of feeling that they're on the inside now. And that is so powerful. So that's been so good in terms of us being able to say, like, actually, one of the reasons why you should stick at this training and stick at what we're doing is because you've got this real opportunity at the other end, and the NHS are committed to bringing you in if they can, because as we've all said, there are workforce issues. You do need to rebuild the staffing levels, and so and there's a lot of movement. So us being able to do that is a real virtuous circle around that.
So Babu, so it's not so much ring fencing posts; it's more getting inside the tent.
Yeah, and feeling like you're part of the family from the beginning. So even though the program's only a couple of weeks, it's intense. You're getting lots of input from Barts and the NHS, lots of input from us, and then we're helping you on the next stage. So it really does feel like it's for you.
Excellent. And Babu, there was also a question there from Layla Begum, the name you may recognise.
Yeah.
About have you got local job fairs? Maybe we'll take that one offline, and I will connect you outside of that. Tim's asked a question about how do you expect to work with integrated care systems. I'm going to come back to that because I think that I'd like to end with that question, if I may, because I think this is a really interesting question about how does an organisation like yours, in interacting with a trust, actually then interact with what's happening at a system level. But what I'd like to do now, if I may, is just move on from the employment, because obviously we know that employment and opportunities to work are such a big contributor economically, locally, and they have such a big impact on individuals. But I kind of want to look at some of the other work that you do, because I think because I think that in this space with the NHS, I think there is huge opportunity for creativity, and for connection, as you talk a lot about. And one of the things that you've done over the past is your Open Poplar program, and that speaks to your role as an asset owner in a place, And it also, and in the NHS, we have lots of NHS buildings which are not fully utilised. And I wondered if you want to say a bit about Open Poplar, because I think that's a really another interesting example of how you can approach economic development.
Yeah. So we, as you say, we've got lots of these assets dotted around Poplar. So they may have been estate service spaces that are no longer in use. They may be little laundry rooms that existed in a block. There may be commercial spaces. There may be spaces in our community centres. And so we had all these underused assets, and to be honest, some of them were in a terrible state. So some of them hadn't been maintained. It was one of those things where when we looked around, you could see why they'd become forgotten, or why people were hanging on to them. So sometimes people were just hanging on to them, saying, like, I'm sure I'll find a use for it eventually. I'm storing all my crap down there, so it's like I need somewhere for that. So you can't have it. And what we did was essentially start to think about how this could be so important for economic and community regeneration. We know that small businesses, community groups, they're really innovative. They can make something out of nothing. And I was really struck by an experience we had where we had a grotty cafe that we used to manage, and it was in the middle of one of our estates, and the windows were never cleaned, and the electricity always used to go off. Nobody smiled, and it was a depressing experience when you went in there. So custom wasn't great either. So as you could probably tell, and we took the decision to move our staff onto something else and give it to a local youth organisation. And literally within a couple of weeks, they had painted it. The staff smiled. They had flowers on the tables. They cleaned the windows, and custom was amazing. And we would go back and we'd say, like, where's this place? And it was like, it's the place that you gave us, a couple of months ago. And it was just fantastic. And it's unlocking that potential, and that's what Open Poplar was about. So it was about identifying all these spaces, B, really kind of explaining what the space is about. So full measurements, lots of photos, location information, a whole load of stuff that would allow people to properly think through what they might be able to offer. And then encouraging people to say, like, right, it's in an attractive website. You can click on to a map. You can click on to the spaces. We would tell you what we were looking for in terms of any rental expectation. But we were open to ideas. So we were saying, come up with ideas, see what you can do, and we will consider anything. And so that process really unlocked such a wide variety of spaces, brought lots of different organizations in. We've had architects, we've had solicitors, we've had community groups, we've had food businesses, we've had fashion businesses. So there's a whole range of things that we were able to stimulate, actually at very little cost. So it just kind of opened the doors. It brought the rest of the organization in, because we've obviously got asset managers who are worried about health and safety, or worried about regulations, but we were able to deal with that. And I think that's the bit that we unlocked. So we said, we'll deal with all the practical aspects. We'll make sure you get credible bids. We'll do the shortlisting, but actually free up the space. And that has really helped our economic strategy locally.
And I suppose the joy of that was also, and someone's put Open Poplar website into the chat. The joy of that is that what you recognise is you didn't have to have the answer. Actually, what you recognise is that you had the space. You also recognise that you didn't even know where all of your redundant space was, and you actually encouraged your local community to go and find out and tell you where some of that space was. But actually, you just said, we've got assets, we've got space. Tell us what you can do with this. And I think sometimes large organizations almost try to orchestrate things too much. They try to think they have to have the answer to some of these issues, and they actually don't need to have that answer, because that answer is actually in your community.
Absolutely.
You mentioned, the other thing that's interesting about that. And I think that's a replicable model with the NHS. We all know. And we won't have the conversation here about kind of when NHS estate becomes surplus or not, but we all know there is space in NHS assets all over communities, and we all know that that it's a travesty in some respects, because some of that space is really well located for lots of different things. So I think this is a really easy and replicable model for any kind of NHS trust, integrated care system, or anyone to develop. But the other thing you mentioned there, that fashion, I want to come and talk to you about fashion, because I think one of and it's connected to that kind of your role as an anchor institution and your role in partnership with others. So I'd never really thought that Poplar HARCA was a fashion organisation. I've always considered it to be a housing association with a very strong community and economic development angle to it. Do you want to say a bit about how you've come across fashion as part of the Lower Lee Valley fashion and creative environment? Because I think that's another really interesting extension of your economic development.
Yeah.
How do you get into fashion, Babu?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you're insulting my dress sense or what, but yeah, despite the fact that I don't know much about fashion, what's been interesting is that it's been a feature of East London for many generations, and so there's this historic context to fashion, both the garment trade, but the creative industries, and I guess what we were struck by is the opportunity for partnership that was created by the Olympic Park and the move of the London College of Fashion to the Olympic Park. So we suddenly had an institution that was based in King's Cross, a bit remote, who were going to move to the Olympic Park, going to move next door. And suddenly the opportunity for partnership became very much something that we could build on and develop. And so we understood the resonance of fashion with our Bangladeshi community, and we have a large Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets. We understood it in terms of the creative sector that was emerging in East London. And so you have the situation where a lot of meanwhile space was being used by artists, by creatives. And so there was a real sense of East London growing this identity. And I think what we did was take advantage of the partnerships that were emerging around the LLDC, who was managing the Olympic Park, and the legacy of the Olympic Park, the London College of Fashion, and the great work that was happening there. And the fact that suddenly East London could re-emerge as something that had a really strong kind of sense of identity around fashion. So the big thing there was having kind of tentatively formed the partnership, and it's important to say that the London Legacy Company were really instrumental in bringing the partners together, and the London College of Fashion had already been doing some really outstanding work with women in prisons, and preparing them for life after prison, and using fashion as a way of creating future careers and future employment prospects. So their social mission really aligned well with us. And so I think we've then got this opportunity to start thinking about the wider context. Then it's down to an amazing team. So we've invested in a creative team at Poplar HARCA called the Accents team. And I'll just give a shout out to Blossom, because I just saw her name crop up. So Blossom, well done, and well done to you and the team. And they really drove this piece of work forward. So I think it's, as you say, I mean, you know, we loved the idea of fashion, but knew nothing about it. And so it's that team, it's bringing in that expertise. And it's a similar story around youth work or employment work or whatever it is. It's bringing in the right level of expertise into the organization. And it's taking that risk, because I think it's sort of understanding that fashion has such resonance. It could be such a big employer. And actually it reaches all sections of our community. So it's a real kind of mixed community initiative. And so it's really then bringing in the expertise within the organisation to drive that forward. So we've benefited hugely from London-wide investment from the GLA. We've benefited hugely from the work of LLDC and the London College of Fashion, but it's bringing it together in Poplar. And so we've created workshop space. We've created hubs for production. We're working really closely with graduates from the London College of Fashion and with local residents to create that workforce. So it really does feel like fashion is embedded now in the local community, and you know, it feels like it's just part of normal life now. So it's incredible that kind of approach to investment, having the vision, but then bringing in the right people, actually kind of now feels very normal and very usual. But yeah, a really great place of economic development.
And Babu, Jane asked a really interesting question, and which asked it to Blossom, but maybe you can answer because Blossom's not on the call with us. How does your staff structure task reflect the ability to undertake this collaborative work? And I think that's a really interesting question for any organization, not just, you know, how does your staff structure, how do you enable an environment structurally and professionally that enables people to do this?
Yeah, I think the chief exec plays a really strong role in this. So I think what we need is quite a fluid structure at the I suppose it's at the end where new work is coming through. So it's particularly around new work. So where we're confident and we've got an established process. So I would say our housing work or our repairs service or our technical services. This is less important, I suppose. You can work within a structure where the chief exec kind of needs to dip in and out, but not necessarily kind of be there all the time. With these new areas of work, it really does need a champion at senior level. And it also needs, in some ways, kind of the opportunity for people to fight it out. So I know I talked about kindness earlier, but there is a sense where you're bringing in something new, where you need to allow teams to kind of challenge each other and to say, like, actually, why are you holding on to those assets? Why aren't we investing in a new fashion quarter or a fashion district or fashion units? And you need to let those arguments play out, but you need the chief executive there, I think, to be the referee in effect and sort of allow those people to be passionate about what they do, to challenge each other, to create sometimes some sort of difficult conundrums to solve, but then to have almost like the ear of the chief executive to say, like, no, I want you to keep going, I want you to keep doing it, I want you to keep pushing. So I think it does need support from the top, and it almost needs a chief executive to play a kind of devil's advocate type role. Like, I know you're doing a great job, but actually, why aren't you considering changing in this way in order to allow this new piece of work to come in? And I really want to see that new piece of work established because it's so important to us in our community.
So kind of very senior level champions, leadership. What about kind of entrepreneurial or even intrapreneurial kind of qualities and skills of people to be able to kind of spot those opportunities, get in there, run with it, find out what's going on, make the difference? So how do you kind of nurture that or recruit for that within the, you know, into what is ostensibly quite a large organization where we see lots of that entrepreneurial flair? We often see that in smaller organizations. How do you do that?
I think there's two parts to that. I think one is to be open to bringing in those entrepreneurial organizations to shake things up a bit and be able to provide some thoughts around what we could do and how we could do it. So I think it is partly about allowing the outside world into your organization and using that to shake things up and think about things. In terms of the entrepreneurship and developing that opportunity for our own staff and our own people who are closely associated with us to take ideas and take them forward, I think it's something that, again, the work of our excellence team has been really instrumental in this. So we've got a team within the organization who are effectively that ideas part of the organization, want to encourage that entrepreneurial approach, no idea too bad or too small or too difficult, and trying to then build that kind of communication with the rest of our staff. So sometimes it's about promoting the ideas that people come up with. So we had a great festival that's been running for many years now, which really came from an individual's passion for swing. So that individual wanted to see an event set up. The Accents team kind of took that idea, developed it, and we now run an annual swing festival, which is not something you'd necessarily associate with Poplar, but it draws people from across the country. It's an incredibly popular event. The locals love it, and it's just created a new sense of identity. And it's when you see that idea come from someone who works in our estate services team, comes up with a great idea, sees it through, sees the organization buy into it, then I think, again, you get to see others come up with their own ideas and start to bring those forward. So it's having the place for those ideas to go. So I think sometimes what's a problem is when you give an idea to a busy manager, sometimes they've got the capacity to take it up, but often they don't. But I think when you've got a dedicated team around this, an ideas team, an entrepreneurial team, then they will champion it, because that's their job and that's what they're about.
Excellent. So someone on the question and answers asked, I think, a really interesting question. So how do you measure your economic progress locally? How do you know that you are making that difference?
Yeah, and so we're aligned with HACT on this. So we're very strong champions of your social value bank and using those measures. And I think that there are three things that we're looking at. So we're looking at the impact on the individual, and we are interested in a couple of measures around that. So one is the social value, the social value bank, and so that gives a really clear indication of the benefits to the individual. We're also looking at a prosperity index, which is something that's been developed for East London and something that UCL have been working with us on. And that really kind of brings together a series of measures which show us the impact on well-being, on economic prosperity, and on sense of community and connection. So we've got this aggregate index, we've got the social value measures, and that really shows the impact to the individuals. What we've also got is some kind of measure of the impact on organizations and the world around them. So we're starting to look at the prosperity index to give us that kind of global perspective on what's happening around there. And then I think a new key measure for us, so impact on the individual, impact on the world around them. And then the third key thing is something around sustainability. What is it? How are we working in a way that is sustainable? And that's both from a kind of, when you're talking about human beings, kind of carbon neutral doesn't really come into it, but it's sustainability in its broadest sense, and it's sort of thinking about how we can do things that we can sustain, that we can develop, and that continue in the longer term. So those are the three kind of types of measures in which we're looking to judge our success. Real stories, they really help. So sometimes you can give people a load of stats, and I think sometimes what we also need is an educated audience, because often people don't necessarily know the difference between good work and mediocre work. And so they'll say, oh, you're working with the community, that's great. Or you've got people a job, that's fantastic. And we need an audience, whether those are stakeholders, whether those are funders, whether those are partners, who say, like, actually, I understand this is great work. You're making a huge impact. This is okay work, and this is not very good work. And I find that sometimes we are trying to present measures, we're trying to explain our work and do things in a way that is intuitive and people can grasp. But I think on the other side, we probably need to do a lot more work on educating the audience in how to receive that and understand it and start to judge it and value it.
And I suppose one of the issues around measurement is also going to be about over what timescale do you measure change. And I think too often we seek to observe immediate change or change in the very short term, without really thinking that actually some of this stuff that we're talking about today, and you said to yourself earlier when you were introducing your work, you've been doing this for 50 odd years. This is a long-term commitment. And I think sometimes we forget in the anchor institution space that one of the real values of being an anchor institution is the longer term perspective. What are your thoughts on kind of how do you know where to kind of hang your hat in some respects? How do you know where to invest for that longer term impact rather than just being, kind of driven by a short term agenda?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I can give you a very good answer to this. I mean, I think it is a mixture of luck, judgment, seizing opportunity, and being prepared to take a chance, to fail, and to try again. So I think that two things that come to mind. One is that we're sort of really interested in this idea of cathedral building. The cathedral builders, so cathedrals took kind of hundreds of years to build, and the cathedral builders would die before the cathedral was built. So what motivated them? And I think for some of them, it was the prospect of going to heaven if they kind of worked on the cathedrals, which is great. But there was an understanding that they would not complete the task themselves, that they would hand over to others, and that would be part of the journey. And I think that's something we understand. So it's not that we can do everything ourselves and we'll hit upon the magic solution, but that there will be others around us and after us who will pick up that work, and they will pick it up in the right spirit. And so we do have long-term opportunities to do this. The second thing is communities are very wary of people who come in and just say like, oh, you know, one of the first things that we got when we started in '98 was people saying to us, well, you're not going to be around for long, you know, like you're going to disappear like everybody else has disappeared. And it really is about saying that take time to build that trust, take time to build those relationships, and the opportunities will emerge from there, and they will develop over time. So the things that we could have done in '98 were quite limited because everything we were doing was just about building trust and confidence. And then later on, you get the sense of actually you can really do some really innovative things, you can change things. The community gives you confidence to try new stuff, and it's the same with institutions, it's the same with the world around us. And so I think it is that steady building and kind of working for stuff in the longer term.
And people in the chat are pushing things about donut economics as a concept. I think, you know, and actually, yeah, there are tools and concepts around there about sustainability which are really helpful. I mean, interestingly, where you work, you are working in a local economy, which is, there's one part of the local economy which is probably the richest part of the UK, Canary Wharf, which overlooks probably the poorest part of the UK. So it's interesting how even when we think about local economies, sometimes there are significant divisions in those local economies that can be very structural in how they actually benefit local people. And there is a question about how far does Canary Wharf actually benefit the local people who live in your homes? Yeah,
it's a good question. I think we work pretty closely with Canary Wharf Group. I mean, it's interesting. We took a group of young people. We took 10 young people to a jobs fair in Canary Wharf the day before yesterday. We took 10 young people, all 10 got jobs in the hospitality industry, and it's understanding where the needs are. So we know there's a lot of jobs there in hospitality and service industry, and Canary Wharf want to fill those jobs. And they were saying, right, bring more young people, you know, because this is fantastic. We're getting all our jobs filled, and you guys are doing a great job in doing it. So what I would say though is for these corporate institutions, I think there is a sense of transience about some of the work that they do. So you do sometimes get some really good close periods of collaboration. You get other periods where they're a bit distant and they're not so interested. So I think you have to ride the wave a bit. We'll definitely push them to do more. Actually, Canary Wharf Group aren't bad. They're a pretty good organisation.
And Babu, just in 30 seconds, how do you engage with this integrated care system that's emerging? So for you, it'll be East London, the Northeast London one.
Yeah, do you know what? I was going to hand that question to you, Drew, because I've got no idea.
But I think it's an interesting question to ask, because in some respects, I think that actually most people outside of the NHS and social care and local government probably don't know the answer to that, because it's not a very connected agenda. So I think there's a lot of work that we have to do to be able to connect that agenda. And actually, for someone like you might have more relationship with the integrated care partnership level, Tower Hamlets, and also at the very neighbourhood level through the primary care network. So I think we need to make that connection, but I think it's incumbent upon us to actually do some of that running as well, because, you know, we've got to make that work, and it's an emerging agenda. Babu, can I just say huge thank you? It's always a pleasure to spend time with you chatting about the work of Poplar HARCA. I think you've demonstrated that actually for taking a long-term perspective, being open to opportunity, being curious, having compassion, caring, being collaborative, they're all the things that actually matter when we think about how we make economic development work in some of the poorest areas of our country. So thank you very much for sharing that. It's been really delightful to spend time with all of you over the last few months, kind of looking at different aspects of work of housing associations. This recording will be available alongside the others. If you haven't had a chance to look at them, do go and have a look at them on the Health Anchor Learning Network website. We'll be sending out further information to you today about how you can engage with the work we're doing, how we can support you around social value, how we can connect you with the world of housing associations. There is a huge opportunity to bring those anchor institutions together. And when we bring them together in creative and purposeful anchor networks, that's when we start to really unlock the power of being an anchor institution. Again, thank you very much, Babu. Thank you very much, everyone watching. And I do hope to be working with you into 2022 on this really exciting agenda. I hope you have a really good rest of the day.